earth-shifting change is and has become a holistic living reality.
Like it or not, planet getting hot, gotta deal with my aunt. Doing this green earth solar cycle melting pot. Yeah, it's the gathering time, time to gather them seeds, plant them trees, free them bees. Time to labor and toil in fertile soil, basic needs, clean water, fresh air breathe. Please listen, earth, solar, son and daughter, nowhere to hide outside divine order.
Greetings. Today we're going to take time and see if we can focus on attaining a greater sense of clarity about who we be as divine children of the sun, the sacred garden culture from which we come as green earth solar conscious beings.
Identify as human.
A human dude.
Human.
A human being.
I'm just a human like everyone else.
It is not everyone who will become divinely clear, but the objective is to see how to get the consciousness of higher peace into the next generation and the next generation after that and after that. So we must begin right here, right now, with who we be as divine children of the sun, focusing on the soulful essence of humanity. We must recognize that this is not about skin color, tone, or any of the other reflections. This is not about perpetuating some kind of political or social ideology. We are in a new Banu cycle.
What is a Banu cycle? Quote, the priests of Heliopolis were also responsible for the calendars and therefore the keepers of time.
Tracking and planting seasons. These are the reasons we were keepers of time. Knew when the planets would align. Knew the coming of the floods and the changing tide. And this we can find. Never did the ice cold deep freeze blight any of these.
The first civilizations of humanity formed along the fertile banks of rivers. The consciousness of who we are as man, he and she, emerged within a green earth solar conscious state of being rooted in the sacred garden culture from which we come as divine children of the sun. The full awareness of who we are in relationship to the wholeness of earth, wind, rain, and sun, each other and all living things thereof, was formulated in those river valley civilizations. Kemet, what was later called Egypt, along the Nile River. In Mesopotamia, along the Tigris and Euphrates River. The Harappan civilization along the Indus River in India, and the Yellow River Valley civilization in China. Among these garden culture civilizations, sometimes called agrarian, Kemet maintained a high degree of unity, stability, and cultural continuity, forwarding a way of life rooted in the netter or nature of Ma'at. Divine order, supreme truth, justice, harmony, reciprocation as a consciousness. And that consciousness,
in the sense of farming
is
and
the
agriculture, for the farmer, the seed is the start of agriculture.
First of all, you cannot study the Egyptians as an archaeologist or as an astronomer or as a philosopher or as an anthropologist. You must put it all together because they put it all together. If you read what the Greeks said, not what we think, but if you read what the Greeks said, they said they got everything from Egypt. They got all their knowledge from Egypt.
Yeah, we are the keepers of the seeds that grow green earth solar breeze. Yeah, that's right, it's the gathering time. Like it or not, planet getting hot, got to deal with my aunt. Doing this new cycle melting pot.
Herodotus, the historian, states that the priests of Heliopolis were the first to discover the solar year. Plato wrote that the priests of Egypt had observed the stars for more than 10,000 years. They preserved the knowledge of the Sphinx, created in the age of the lion thousands of years before the accession of the first pharaoh and the great deluge. In the middle of the temple, In an open courtyard stood an obelisk, on top of which sat the Ben stone. The Ben stone looked like a small pyramid. The Ben stone was seen as the solidified seed of Atum, the stone of creation. It was on this stone that the phoenix, or Banu bird, would return every 12,594 years and place its new egg. At that moment, a new era of mankind was started.
When we take time and reason with the holistic living nature of a soul-to-soul relationship, the first point that we must comprehend is that within the ancient Kemetic order, the various elements of God, i.e. the nectars, those elements that come together to create the essence of who we be, is masculine and feminine. And as such, the vibration of that masculine and feminine energy is the worship that we must put forward through our own beings. Thus, it is a requirement that the masculine he must give honor and respect to she, and equally that the feminine she must give all due honor and praise to the masculine. The offsprings will be a combination of their relationship, love, respect with each other. We must comprehend that with the ancient Kemetic tellings, we're talking about energies. Asar is a nature of energy that honors, give all due respect to soul encounters, he and she. And if we can comprehend that, we can come out of this parallel with a greater sense of unified oneness.
And all that rises shall emerge out of this green earth solar conscious energy surge.
And if we don't, he and she, in their battle of the sexes war, will destroy each other.
Got to deal with my
Headline news tells a tale of a consciousness declining into the pits of hell. Yeah, a modern deep freeze mentality on the edge of the ledge of fatality. And it does not take a master thesis. See the lost and stray pieces, humanity's family tree. Hitting the apocalyptic Armageddon as the mental white blight keeps spreading. A cold, pale state of mind in the snow or in the sunshine. Yeah, a supremacist nature arose in those who sought to conquer and rule the world. Bloodstained banner unfurled in a hater plot to dominate the melting pot.
together in time like it's or not.
Japanese philosopher George Osawa stated that there was only one incurable sickness: arrogance. If a patient does not regard himself as sick, he cannot submit to a cure. The arrogant man does not need to see. He already sees almost everything. And what he thinks he has yet to learn, he believes the experts will one day show him. Who are these experts? They are not really doctors of the soul. They do not have the man's interest at heart. They are in fact his worst enemies, his most cunning manipulators, who lead him to do their bidding like any slave master since Egypt. End of quote. What is the nature of energy? What is the nature of consciousness that fuels this arrogance?
It's shown very clearly that there is a tremendous amount of disorder that's manifesting within the mind consciousness of man, he and she. And that mind consciousness is somehow influenced by that self-asserting nature that would influence arrogance, cockiness, vain vibrations.
Quote, nobody is going to tell me what to do with my life. This is my body. This is my life. End of quote. And you sit like a puppet being manipulated by an unseen puppet master as those kinds of arrogant and blatantly stupid statements come out your mouth. Please consider who is talking, who is claiming possession, where is that breath of life coming from, and what will you do when that next breath does not come? End of quote. Page 39, Banu Book 3 by High Priest Kwatamani.
Totally disconnecting from the holistic living essence of divine humility, respect, and the graciousness of appreciation. What we must do, however, is look a little closer at the vibration of mentioning Egypt for those who have not the complete comprehension due to the fact of miseducation, misguidance, misdirection. We must comprehend that due to the massive amount of shape-shifting changes to satisfy and to appease the warlord nature, the culture of opposition has in fact a place here to create conflict, confusion, and chaos. We're going to straighten it out. Pay close attention so that you will begin to comprehend exactly what happened.
Yeah, in the fertile soil we toil. Sacred garden culture keepers. Time to wake up the sleepers. Mama Earth giving thanks. Greeneries are our banks. Family community grows in ranks. Our hips I do no harm. Harmony and compassion is our charm.
Pay close attention so that you will begin to comprehend exactly what happened as it relates to Egypt. The vibration that did manifest after the dethroning of the Osirian nature, the Osirian nature being the nature of higher peace conscious thought and reasoning and actions, the nature of the green earth solar conscious collective vibration of divine socioeconomic family community.
Quote, Asar, having become king of Kemet, applied the soulful essence of his divine guiding and protecting energies to civilizing his countrymen by turning them from their former indigent and barbarous course of life. He taught them how to cultivate and improve the fruits of the earth, and he gave them a body of laws whereby to regulate their conduct, and instructed them in the reverence and worship which they were to pay to the gods. With the same good disposition he afterwards traveled over the rest of the world, inducing the people everywhere to submit to his discipline, not indeed compelling them by force of arms, but persuading them to yield to the strength of his reasons, which were conveyed to them in the most agreeable manner, in hymns and songs, accompanied with instruments of music. End of quote. Page 113, taken from the prophetic 12,594-year Banu cycle, encoding the consciousness of higher peace through the divine union of masculine and feminine energy. Book 1 by High Priest Kwatamani.
Asar, Aset, and Nebuhet. What we have is a divine union of masculine and feminine energy in an accountability of he the male, taking the holistic living responsibility over the feminine she. On so many occasions, you take note that there are those who, because of fear or otherwise, do not include Aset and Nebuhet as a oneness with Asar. It is very clear that so many say so many different things about Nebuhet, who was actually mated to Set, but could not stand the cold and barren nature that he brought forward, could not stand the harsh and cruel way that he treated her, and as such made a decision to leave that behind and move forward into a holistic living relationship.
If you think you have heard what the iron I've said, follow this thread. Be you blonde, black head, or nappy, not the dread. Roll call. This is to all of y'all divided we fall. Together we stand a chance to advance beyond this white supremacy romance that has mass populations in a self-destructive trance. And only divine spirit conscious insight can get this right. Doing this coming forth of day by night. Within this green earth solar conscious meltdown of mental white light.
The Ethiopians say that the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians, Osiris having been the leader of the colony. They add that the Egyptians have received from them as from authors and their ancestors the greater part of their laws. Thence he, Osiris, passed through Arabia, bordering upon the Red Sea as far as India and the utmost coasts that were inhabited. He built likewise many cities in India, one of which he called Nysa, willing to have a remembrance of that in Egypt where he was brought up. We note that Osiris, referenced by Greek name, is none other than Asar, Thus, we are speaking of the Kemetic lands as the continuation of Ethiopia, the old Ethiop lands of higher peace. We are speaking of garden culture traditions that were spread throughout the eastern lands of Africa, the Middle East, India, Asia, and the other Fertile Crescent region. The higher peace consciousness forwarded by the sacred ancestral Naga priesthood was spread in Asarian teachings that seeded world religious traditions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Taoism, and others. Within these traditions, one can track and trace the sacred garden culture values that begin with consuming from the fruits of the tree of life. Page 72, the Asarian Sacred Ancestral Temple of Christ, Whole Life Healing Through Plant-Based Consumption, by High Priest Kwatamani.
Take note that I said something about Asar as in the image of the most supreme seen and unseen essence of the sacred gods and goddesses of our existence. Oftentimes we get confused, and you hear it so often. No distinction. You don't believe in God. You don't worship God. And the reality is, which God are you speaking of? The God that gives all its energy toward the rebuilding of humanity. That God that actually do not stand alone, because we are birthed from she and we're birthed from he in the nature of energy. And we're talking about the energy of soul-to-soul relationships. That relationship that do indeed manifest in a higher peace conscious state of being. We then must become clear that we are a worshiping energy of that which we consume.
This is a sacred meditation, a solar radiation. Melanin, the dominant trait on how we interrelate. Yeah, sun rays, so many ways, all across the sun belt zones. Black, brown, red, golden earth tones. Lineages mixed and mingled by degrees. Half, quarter, 1/8 identity. Maroon, mulatto blend, quadroon, octoroon kin. Yeah.
If we consume of toxic disorder, the nature of energy that will manifest within us is an energy of toxic disorder, because we are a sum total of the nature of energy that we consume, he and she. Thus, when you take a look at Set, you can see within that monotheistic nature, which do indeed reflect Set. No ands, ifs, and buts about it. And that reflection is a God, just as it said, of vengeance, war, greed, jealousy, and wrath. If you can comprehend, why would the almighty, omnipotent, most supreme energy have any sense of jealousy and wrath and vengeance? Simply because that is the nature of that lower and lesser God, that individualistic state of being that manifested self, Set. And we must comprehend that in order for us to get past this pale veil of deception that has covered the mental, physical, and spiritual sight of man, he and she. Blindfolded the mental, physical, and spiritual sight of man, he and she.
Open our eyes, open we eyes that we may see, the essence of the soul may truly be.
In Kemetic teachings, Mother Nut birthed both Asar, her eldest son, and Set, her youngest son. Let's hear what she has to say. Quote, the birth of Asar is announced by his mother Nut in hymn 1 contained within what has been identified as the oldest existing religious text in the world, the Pyramid Text. Quote, I say by Nut, the brilliant, the great, this is my son, my firstborn, opener of my womb. This is my beloved, with whom I am pleased. End of quote, page 115, Banu Book 1. Quote, and last there was born Set, and Set tore a hole in his mother's side, Set the violent one. End of quote, page 118, Banu Book 1. Quote, Is there a mother who consumes her child? Is there a woman who draws her knife against him who emerged from her? I have opened my mouth in order to eat against that wretched Set and his following who grasped in evil against the eldest of my body. End of quote. Page 142, Banu Book 1.
And Set is a nature of energy that diametrically opposes divine order. Just that Asar is a nature of energy that honors, give all due respect to soul encounters, he and she.
But just look around. What happened?
Remember the deep freeze blight that inflicted a mental white blight.
What happened is but just a second away from one getting the clarity if one can gain and maintain a focus.
This is how the Earth looked at the end of the last ice age. The northern hemisphere covered in ice. Europe barely recognizable. But evidence suggests the world map is about to be redrawn by a mega flood of biblical proportions.
The Greek philosopher Plato recounted this telling about one of the 7 great wise men of Greece named Solon, who went to Kemet to learn from the sacred ancestral Kemetic Naga priesthood. Oh, Solon, Solon, you Greeks are never anything but children, and there's not an old man among you. Solon in return asked him what he meant. I mean to say, he replied, that in mind you are all young. There is no old opinion handed down among you by ancient tradition. There have been and will be again many destructions of mankind, arising out of many causes. The greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. They have all been written down by us of old, and are preserved in our temples. Whereas just when you and other nations are beginning to be provided with letters and the other requisites of civilized life, after the usual interval, the stream from heaven like a pestilence comes pouring down and leaves only those of you who are destitute of letters and education, and so you have to begin all over again like children. End of quote. Page 271, Banu Book 1.
This disaster begins around 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age.
What I'm saying is that there are physical adaptations, more important than color, which made a great deal of aggression within this group. A lot of it was due to adaptation and evolution within a glacial environment. Adaptation and evolution within a glacial environment, within a glacial environment, within a glacial environment.
Remember the deep freeze blight that inflicted a mental white blight. Remember the frostbite each lonely night, the blood spilling ritual and rite of a lusting appetite, the rigor mortis of flush, snow and ice rush, then splatter blood red when feasting on the dead. Remember the mind maze, the blizzards of blind days, in them caves with no sun rays. Those are the wretched conditions that oppose our sacred traditions as children of the sun.
A huge glacier covering an area we now know as Canada is receding. As it melts, a vast freshwater lake bigger than Texas forms. For a time, the water is contained behind a wall of ice. But 8,500 years ago, this ice gives way, releasing this colossal body of water into the world's oceans.
If that was to happen today with the same speed, it would completely devastate London, New York. In fact, it would impact on every coastal nation around the world.
According to some studies, the area now covered by the Black Sea was once home to one of the largest populations of the time.
In fact, it is very clear that these offsprings who actually came out of the Black Sea Basin meltdown had experienced a situation far worse prior to that, in the cold and dank, barren caves that they resided in order to keep from freezing, and that in fact, that self-deified nature would manifest at its greatest level and degree, because it was dog eat dog, every man for his self. It would be a situation where if you got hungry, you ate the next thing living, whether it be he, she, a baby, or any other thing. We have to comprehend that this is the reality. Now we also have to comprehend, as was said in that song, that at one point we were one, and that there was a situation, a circumstance that actually put a divide within and among the family tree, within and among the family tree of man, he and she. Now, this is what we have to sort out, and we cannot sort it out with that same nature of energy. We cannot sort it out with the nature of energy that actually has been the catalyst of that division. And it continues up until this very day. It continues where one branch of the family order has done everything possible to create the levels and degrees of deception, historic distortions, and any other thing possible to declare that he is the almighty and omnipotent, and that as a supreme being, that he is far beyond his sacred ancestral mother and father.
Disconnected from our sacred ancestral line, self-centered survival, a state of mind. Yet let us never ever forget, before the cycle of torment was begun,